It begins like a whisper, a casual remark at your expense, a subtle change in tone, a stare held too long, a smile carrying something sharper beneath the surface. Most people dismiss it. They wave it off. They convince themselves it isn't worth acknowledging until it happens again, louder, sharper. This time, in front of others. And when they finally feel the urge to react, it's already too late, because disrespect ignored is disrespect accepted. Machiavelli understood this truth more deeply than anyone. In a world ruled by power, reputation, and dominance, he knew respect is not earned, it's enforced. When someone disrespects you, your next move is everything. It doesn't just shape what they think of you, but it teaches everyone watching how you will be treated moving forward. Disrespect at first is rarely personal. It's a test, and if you fail it, you're not just seen as weak, you're seen as safe to disrespect again. So when disrespect comes, the response must be immediate. Not later, not in theory, but in the moment. You go silent but not passive. Because here is the first Machiavellian rule of dealing with disrespect. The person who reacts emotionally loses standing, but the one who withdraws with intention becomes unpredictable. And unpredictability breeds fear. Silence doesn't mean ignoring, it means removing your energy. You don't laugh it off, you don't brush it aside, you don't explain your feelings. Instead, you make them feel your absence, in your eyes, your tone, your refusal to give life to their move. It's a sudden pause in the rhythm they thought they controlled, an unexpected void they didn't anticipate, because disrespect thrives on reaction, on laughter, defensiveness, excuses. But when met with cold stillness, it exposes itself for what it is, a shallow, desperate play for dominance. Machiavelli himself never struck first. He observed. He let his enemies reveal themselves fully, boldly, before ever moving. And when he did respond, it was never with apology. It was with precision. That's your next step. Reflect the violation back. Not through insult, not through aggression, but through a question, because when someone disrespects you, they expect emotion. They want to spark insecurity. What they don't expect is exposure. So you hold their gaze, tilt your head slightly, and with surgical calm you say, "Did you mean to say it like that? Or you sure you want to repeat that? Or that sounded personal, want to clarify before I respond?" Each line slices clean. You're not denying their move. You're forcing them to either double down or retreat, to put their intent on record, and most won't. Because those who throw disrespect aren't usually bold, they're opportunists. They probe for weakness, and when you meet them with silence and cold precision, they start doubting themselves. And that doubt, that hesitation, is the real victory, not revenge, not drama, doubt. Because the person who can make others second-guess themselves, stumble in their words, adjust their behavior, doesn't need to demand respect. They embody it. But the game doesn't end there. Anyone can handle a single clash. What they can't endure is consistency. If someone disrespects you once and you deal with it, that's good. But if you soften later, if you reopen the door, they will test again. So the third move is simple. Redefine the relationship immediately. You don't go back to normal. You don't pretend nothing happened. You reset the terms in your tone, your presence, your availability. Machiavelli knew that when punishment is public, measured, and justified, it doesn't just stop a threat. It sends a message to everyone. So if disrespect came in front of others, let your new posture echo louder than any comeback could. Withdraw your warmth. Sharpen your words, decline their invitations, no announcement needed, just a shift they cannot ignore. This is the difference between those who are respected and those who are overlooked. It isn't domination through fear, it's authority through principle. You've made it clear to the room, I'm not available for that, and I won't justify myself just to make someone else comfortable. Now the current shifts, the atmosphere changes. People notice, they grow careful. Your name becomes one they use with caution, with calculation, never casually. Because the person who cannot be disrespected isn't the loudest. It's the one who knows exactly how to respond in the moment. Not with noise, but with silence that cuts deeper, clarity that leaves no doubt, and a refusal to value comfort over self-respect. That's how you end the game before it starts. Not with rage, not with ego, but with what they never saw coming. Discipline, distance, and complete command of the room. Disrespect is never random. It's a signal, a probe, a test to see how far someone can go before you push back. And when you let just one slide, one insult disguised as humor, one subtle dismissal, one poisonous compliment, you've shown everyone in the room exactly what your silence costs. Machiavelli would warn you, once you're seen as easy to violate, winning back control takes double the effort. That's why what comes after the first moment matters just as much as the moment itself, because the tests will return, not the same way, but in softer, sharper disguises. A little joke with a smile, an oversight that cuts you out of a decision, a passive remark while their eyes study your face for weakness. That's when you move to the second strike. Reinforce the boundary with disproportionate consequence. Machiavelli's philosophy was never about fairness. It was about effectiveness. He understood what most people refuse to admit. If the punishment equals the offense, it's forgettable. But if it's greater, it becomes unforgettable. This isn't emotion. It's a message. You don't get to cross me twice. So when the boundary is tested again, your reaction is colder, not louder. If the disrespect is public, your response is public, but not through insults, through surgical rejection. They drop a comment. You meet it with a pause, a steady stare, then shift your focus to someone else. They ask you a question. You answer with one word, then move on. They try to regain your warmth. You give them formality, distance, politeness without access. It's not an attack. It's a removal. You're not fighting them. You're showing them the door has closed. And that loss of access, that quiet exile, cuts deeper than any insult could. This is where most people fail. They crave likability. They want peace. They convince themselves that forgiveness will earn admiration. But Machiavelli would scoff at that. Respect doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from consequences. Cold, deliberate consequences delivered without anger. And here's where your real power begins, because people are always watching. They saw the moment of disrespect. They saw how you responded, and now they're waiting to see if you meant it. This is where your image transforms, and image, Machiavelli taught, is more powerful than truth. How you are perceived after conflict becomes either your shield or your weakness. You want your silence to be understood as, he doesn't tolerate that. She won't entertain disrespect. You only get one chance with them, and when your name carries that weight, everything shifts. People choose their words more carefully. They avoid careless jokes at your expense. They introduce you to others as sharp, intense, no nonsense. That becomes your power. You didn't ask for it. You created it. One calculated response at a time. But there's another level, more difficult, more dangerous, because some people don't stop. They don't care about shame or approval. They want reaction. They feed on chaos, on disruption, on pushing boundaries for the thrill of it. And when those people collide with someone like you, they either retreat completely or escalate. And if they escalate, that's when you move to the third and final response. You take their disrespect and you turn it into their downfall. You don't rise with emotion. You rise with strategy. You don't escalate with anger. You escalate with presence. If the person holds influence, reputation, or status, you turn their own behavior into their downfall, with precision sharp enough to draw blood, but clean enough to leave no trace on you. You frame them carefully, never sloppy, always deliberate. A calm line delivered at the right moment does more damage than a storm of outrage. You might tilt your head and say, "Interesting joke. Do you share that one at work too?" Or, "If that's how you speak to friends, I'd hate to hear how you treat strangers." or even surprising choice of words to say out loud. You're not debating them, you're putting a spotlight on them. You force them to sit inside their own words, exposed in front of everyone else, and suddenly their confidence contracts. Not because you crushed them, but because you revealed them, stripped bare for what they really are, small, insecure, desperate for noise to cover silence. This is the essence of Machiavellian retaliation. It is never reckless, it is never loud. It is measured, patient, and executed so smoothly that your opponent doesn't realize the checkmate until it is already sealed. And the beauty of it, you're still calm, still collected. You didn't chase their disrespect, you let it linger, and then collapsed it back onto them so it became their burden to carry. That's how power is built quietly, not through endless reaction, but by making every disrespectful act a brick in the wall of their own exposure. That's how you stop chasing respect, because now they all know. You don't argue, you don't explain, you don't excuse. You end it cleanly, silently, with finality. Most people miss this truth. Disrespect doesn't come from boldness, it comes from safety. They disrespect you because they think they can. They assume you won't respond. They joke because they're certain you'll laugh it off. They test you because they believe you've never drawn a line. That false sense of safety is the fuel behind most violations. And Machiavelli understood, real power isn't in striking often, it's in creating the belief that you could, at any moment, in a way they won't see coming and won't know how to contain. That's the next stage. You become a question mark, a presence they can't pin down. You don't need to bark threats. You become the possibility of consequence. That alone makes people hesitate. From this point forward, when someone disrespects you and you've already drawn the boundary, your mission isn't to make them like you, it's to make them uncertain about you. Not terrified, not submissive, just unsure. Did I go too far? Why are they so quiet right now? What are they thinking? Why didn't they respond the same way this time? That uncertainty is your armor, because people avoid what they can't predict. This is why Machiavelli warned against being too transparent, too consistent, too easy to read. A leader who is predictable becomes a leader who is exploitable. But silence, unpredictability, controlled withdrawal, that creates mystery, and mystery shifts the room. You respond once with surgical coldness, then retreat back into stillness. You become an anomaly, and in human psychology, anomalies command attention. People start adjusting themselves around you, not because you demanded it, but because their instincts tell them to. The mind avoids what it doesn't fully understand. So you feed that. You don't speak as much as others. You hold your gaze longer than is comfortable. You withhold words until the moment they matter most, and when you finally speak, every sentence lands like a hammer. And here's the deeper twist. Respect doesn't come from being liked, it comes from being felt. When you walk into a room and the atmosphere shifts, when voices lower, when posture straightens, when tones adjust, that's not friendliness, that's presence. And presence is born of contrast. You're not always reactive, but when you are, it cuts sharp. You don't try to dominate, but you never let a boundary slide. You don't beg for respect. You erase access the second it's broken. That's how your very energy becomes a silent warning, an unspoken threat wrapped in calm control. But the highest transformation comes when you stop treating disrespect as a wound and start treating it as data. The average person hears an insult and bleeds. You hear it and think, there's the fracture in them. They throw their mockery, and you don't even blink because you see through it. You read the hunger behind their disrespect, insecurity, jealousy, fear, projection, a desperate need to claim control where they feel none. That's the final turn of power. When someone disrespects you, they expose themselves, not you, so you log it, you store it, and you move forward, not with forgiveness but with calculation. Do they still deserve access to you? Should they be isolated quietly or confronted publicly? Do you use them as an example to others, or do you erase them silently? You're no longer playing an emotional game. You're arranging positions. And as Machiavelli warned, the strongest position is the one where others fear breaking your boundary, even in your absence. That's victory. Not when people admire you, not when they praise you, but when the weight of your presence is felt, even when you're not in the room. Because the ones who are never disrespected unto the loudest, they are the ones who've been made disrespect too costly. Not through fury, not through revenge, but through steady silence, sharp consequence, and unapologetic self-enforcement. You don't need to play their social game. You play the power game. And when you do, everything shifts. People hesitate before testing you. Their jokes lose bite. Their tone softens. Their energy adjusts because now they understand. You're not here to blend in. You're here to be respected. And if they can't provide that, you'll leave them in a silence they won't recover from. There's a moment in every hierarchy, subtle but undeniable, when the room recalibrates around you. It happens after the silence, after the enforcement, after you've shown without words that you are not someone to cross. And it is not just that people stop disrespecting you, it is that they stop even considering the possibility. That's the final layer Machiavelli would demand. You don't merely respond to disrespect. You redefine what you represent in their minds, because real power isn't about what you say or do, it's about what people believe you might do, even if you do nothing at all. You become the unknown, the one whose silence isn't surrender but calculation, whose calm isn't friendliness but control. And here is what most fail to grasp. Enforcing the boundary once is not the end, it is the beginning. It becomes your reputation test. Not just with the person who crossed you, but with everyone who witnessed it, directly or indirectly. Because when disrespect happens in public, all eyes shift to you. They're waiting to see if your value is anchored within, or if it crumbles under pressure. And when you hold the frame without exploding, without apologizing, without scrambling for validation, they feel something they can't quite explain: certainty. And certainty is rare in a world addicted to approval. This doesn't mean you grow cold or hostile. It means your warmth is now intentional. Your smile becomes a choice, not an obligation. Your words are measured, not automatic. Access to you is earned, not assumed. That's how you become untouchable, not by physical dominance, but by energetic weight. And that weight is built not by addition, but by subtraction. You strip away reactivity, you cut out neediness, you eliminate over-explaining, defending, justifying, or tolerating even 1% of disguised disrespect. And when you do, the entire atmosphere shifts. Rooms slow when you walk in. People stop cutting you off mid-sentence. They repeat your words later because they were few and deliberate. You're no longer navigating social space, you are the space. And here comes Machiavelli's most merciless lesson. Men must be either respected or removed. In today's world, that means this: either they recognize your value or they lose the privilege of your presence. It isn't revenge, it isn't drama. It's consequence, pure and unshaken. The ones who disrespect you once, then never again, those aren't enemies. They're reminders. But the ones who do it subtly, repeatedly, manipulatively, those you don't correct, you disappear from their world, or worse for them, you ascend while they fade into irrelevance, because your silence exposed them and your absence confirmed it. You were never theirs to access, you were tolerating them. And once that shift is complete, your posture to the world is forever altered. You don't chase approval. You don't answer shadow attacks. You don't prove yourself as the bigger person, because now you embody the truth Machiavelli knew centuries ago. You never have to defend what you refuse to let anyone touch. They can't touch your respect if they can't reach your level. They can't weaken you if your foundation was never built on their approval. They can't shake you if your silence forces them to wrestle with their own insecurity. This is the highest form of psychological control. Not cruelty, not arrogance, but mastery. Mastery over your reactions. Mastery over the energy you choose to give back. Mastery over who even earns the privilege of seeing a response from you. This is how kings moved in Machiavelli's world. And it's how you must move in yours, not with anger, not with chaos, but with a presence so exact, so deliberate, that violating it once becomes unforgettable. Because after that, respect doesn't just appear, it becomes the measure by which everyone else is judged. And then comes the final test. The moment someone disrespects you and realizes they've miscalculated, you don't punish them, you don't absolve them, you do something far more commanding. Because the question isn't what you do when someone offends you. The real question is what you do when they know they were wrong. That's where legacy is written. At that stage, you're not reacting anymore. You're authoring the narrative. You're shaping how they see themselves, how others see them, and how you define yourself moving forward. And here lies Machiavelli's final revelation. Mercy, when stripped of warmth, is more chilling than punishment, because mercy delivered with no emotional softness carries a quiet but devastating truth. You are beneath my concern, you are no longer a factor. That is how you end the game. After you've set the boundary, after you've withdrawn your presence, after you've held frame in absolute silence, letting the weight of it echo, they may try to return, they may attempt to apologize, they may exaggerate kindness, they may laugh nervously, hoping to test whether the ice has melted. But this is where your power crystallizes. You don't lash out, you don't reassure, you don't bend, you simply remain still. No bitterness, no grudge, no need to explain the distance. You allow them to wander inside the new reality you have constructed. A reality where your attention no longer revolves around them, where your energy no longer bends to include them, where they become a shadow moving through a world they no longer influence. This isn't spite, it's power through absence. Because nothing unsettles someone who tried to rattle your frame more than discovering you were never dependent on their approval. You never needed their recognition, you never operated by their rules. And the final sting comes when they realize their disrespect didn't weaken you, it refined you, it raised your stature. It made you sharper, more respected, more untouchable. That's the Machiavellian role, not the vengeful ruler who punishes every offense, but the silent architect of consequence, the figure who lets others expose their own weakness, while you remain calm, precise, unreachable, the one who never begs for respect because respect has already become the unspoken law around you. And once that law is set, no one forgets. In the aftermath, something strange begins. Your name circulates quietly, not fueled by gossip, but by restraint. People whisper, "He doesn't say much, but when he does, I've never seen her lose her composure." Careful with that one. You don't get second chances. That's the power you've forged. A reputation so steady that people start self-correcting in your presence. They double-check their tone. They weigh their words. They wonder if you're paying attention. Not because they're afraid, but because your energy now carries undeniable gravity. And from that point on, you no longer battle for respect. You embody it. You've proven something far rarer than dominance. You've mastered selective presence. You enter when you choose. You speak when it matters. And when you leave, whether a conversation, a room, or a relationship, your absence lingers. Because the person who cannot be disrespected is not the loudest voice. They are the one whose presence is never guaranteed. So let them speculate, let them wonder, let them anticipate what move you'll make next. Because deep down, they already know. If they cross the line, you won't argue, you won't defend, you won't chase, you'll vanish. And in that silence, they'll hear something louder than any words, the sound of finality, the sound of a door that will never open again. And that silence will echo longer than any comeback ever could.